Okay, are we ready to go? Okay. So we'll call to order the Town of Gilbert Planning Commission regular meeting. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody can please stand and face the colors.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item will be roll call.
Commissioner Cavaney,
Here.
Commissioner Simon,
Here.
Commissioner Munn,
Here.
Commissioner Mackin,
Here.
Commissioner Alibrandi,
Here.
Vice Chairman Bloomfield,
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Yep. Next will be approval of agenda. There's been no discussion to move any items around, so the agenda will remain as is. Vice Chair, can I get a motion, please?
Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as it's shown and written.
Motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Simon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say
Aye.
no. The agenda is approved. Next will be communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within jurisdiction of the town, but not on the agenda. The commission response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Is there anyone online that would like to address the commission at this time?
Chairman, I will unmute the public line. Please state your name if you wish to speak about something that is not on the agenda. I'm unmuting now. Does anybody wish to speak on something that is not on the agenda? I don't hear anybody.
All right, let's move along. Report from council liaison on current events. Council member September.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Since the last time we met, the Town Council has approved the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, which today is the first day of that new budget. That budget was a particularly heavy lift this year for staff with the anticipated COVID impacts that had to be built into the budget and all of the numbers that had to be reassessed. That we normally don't have to go through that in regular years. I thought they did a great job, and they actually had built in like a stair-step reduction as we learn what the COVID impacts are going to be. So that's been approved. Our Gilbert Regional Park construction is on schedule, and in the month of July, they will complete construction on 6 tennis courts, 16 pickleball courts, 2 basketball courts, and so we'll see that construction complete this month. And then finally, last time we met, I wanted to have our Director of Economic Development, Dan Henderson, give a presentation on the historic district and the vision that our economic development team and planning staff has for that area. That presentation is not ready. It needs a few final touches. He asked if we could extend that to our August 5th Planning Commission hearing so that he could present that then. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move along to public hearing consent items. All items listed below are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The commissioner may, by a single motion, approve any number of items where, after opening the public hearing, no person requests the item be removed from the consent calendar. If such a request is made, the commission shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate action. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. The items we'll be voting on under the consent calendar is item 6, DR 19-193, Higley Self-Storage. Item 7, DR 20-75, DR 18-98SA, Gilbert Regional Park, MSP. Item 8, FM 20-01, Wanna Meadows. Item 9, S20-01, Wanna Meadows. Item 10, DR 20-09, Central Arizona Supply Potato Bond Amendment to DR 17-1040. Item 11, DR 20-25, Gray Star Active Adult Apartment Homes. Item 12, DR 19-99, Milling Machinery. And item 13, S 19-11, Barge Val Vista North. Vice Chair, can I get a motion, please?
Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as outlined by you.
The motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Simon. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to public hearing non-consent items. Non-consent public hearing items may be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number in which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. We're going to go a little out of order for these next two items that are on non-consent. Let's just do number 15 first, DR 20-24, Recon Office Building. It's being requested to be continued to the August hearing. Vice Chair, can I get a motion on that, please?
Chairman, I move to approve item number 15, to approve the continuance request to August 5th for item number 15.
Okay, motion to continue to August. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simon with the second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries. Moving to item 14Z 20-03, Trilogy at Power Ranch. It's been discussed that it will be recommended that we continue this one to a further hearing date, but we understand there are a good amount of residents in the area that would like to have been waiting online to be heard. So what we're going to do is let's just get the motion out there first. We'll hold the vote, see if anybody online wants to address the commission at this time. Once we get through all that, then we'll vote on the motion. Commissioner Alibrandi, can I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, first, with full disclosure, I do have an in-law who lives at this property, but regardless of what happens here, there will be no property value impact. I have checked with the town attorney, and it's her opinion that there is no conflict. I am on record last month in support of private ownership and doing what they want with private property. However, having reviewed the 141-page file and additional letters from homeowners in dissent, I am back to neutral today. It is not the role of the Planning Commission to ensure that HOA boards follow their own CC&Rs and governance procedures. Staff is to review and endorse town policy only. In the file, however, it appears that the board may not have followed the plan according to a plurality a few years ago, and in question is they're following budget procedures as well. However, this is not in our portfolio, but there is significant owner pushback. This is in our portfolio. It is one of our roles to approve or disapprove changes to ordinances on behalf of the town council. I do not think it's advisable, knowing some of these issues in the record, to approve any changes by the town until there is clarity from the HOA Board of Directors at Trilogy about homeowner dissatisfaction with noise and property value diminution. Mr. Chairman, I request a motion to continue Z20-03 until the September 2nd Planning Commission meeting to allow the Trilogy Board to address these significant neighborhood concerns about noise mitigation and property value diminution.
Okay, we have a continuous to the September hearing. Eva, I'm going to look to you to see if there are members from the public that would like to address the commission at this time on this case.
Chairman, the applicant I know would like to address the commission, and there are several neighbors. Who would you wish to hear from first?
Let's start with the applicant first, and then we'll go with the neighbors after that. And then, so the applicant will get 10 minutes. Then we'll go to the neighbors. Each neighbor, how many neighbors are there that want to speak?
I don't know for certain. I have 3 listed, but then there are other people on the public. So I know of 3 names, but then I would have to check with the public how many wish to speak.
Okay, so if anybody from the public is hearing, because chances are it looks like this is going to be continued to September, you will have September as a public hearing date to state your concerns at that time as well, should you not want to just state it tonight. So when we get to the public, we'll give the public, if it looks like there's a lot, they'll get 2 minutes each. And then if need be, the applicant can have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. Again, just want to remind everybody, especially everybody that's online, we are most likely going to vote to continue this to September. If you'd like to be heard then, while we vote, it would probably behoove us as well, because everything will be still fresh in our memory. So let's go ahead and start with the applicant if they still would like to address the commission at this time.
Good afternoon. This is Adam Baugh. Just want to make sure you can hear me.
We can hear you fine.
Thank you. Members of the commission, thank you for the chance to opine on this. I do have a presentation prepared, but I think right now the question is really on the motion for continuance. I won't go through that presentation. I would like to address some of the comments that were just mentioned and alluded to in that motion. The board of directors at Trilogy have been working on this case since 2014, when it was approved by the voters to go for and improve these courts. There have been significant involvement and participation from the community since then, including meetings in 2016, 2017, 18, 19, and 2020, and as recently as last Friday. Any insinuation that there's not been sufficient notice or participation is incorrect. Also, with regard to questions related to noise impacts, those have been addressed. There's a noise study that's been provided and submitted to the community as well as to the council, as well as to staff. Questions regarding site layout, parking, design, all those are part of a subsequent design review, but have also been part of this discussion since the beginning. I suspect that the interest that's been generated here does not reflect the actual reality. We had a meeting in February where the overall majority of the people significantly supported this case. We had a meeting last Friday, another board meeting, where the overall majority of the people supported this case. In fact, the board entertained a motion to continue with this application as recently as last Friday and approved it 6-1 to propel this application forward. It's also important to know and highlight that the matter before you today is a setback reduction. The matter that will come before you in the future would be a design review case. Questions regarding design layout, sound walls, noise attenuation, lighting, parking, et cetera, are all part of a subsequent DR case. Today's hearing simply is about a PAD amendment to reduce a setback. And I'll just add one last thing. I suspect that much of this discussion that's prompted the continuance is because somebody has created an alternative plan and wants that alternative plan to be considered by the town. That plan was brought before the board for consideration. That board evaluated that plan, found significant deficiencies in that plan. It required 4 additional zoning processes with the town. And as a result, the board again yet affirmed the desire to proceed with the plan that is presently in front of you today. This plan has been in place and approved time and time and time after again. We urge the ability, in fact, we have significant people who've expressed interest in participating in this meeting today, who are gathered with me here at this table and also online, who desire the opportunity for a hearing today.
Mr. Barr, was that the end of your presentation, or are you still speaking right now?
Now, I reserve, I guess, my presentation for if we move forward with the
Okay.
hearing.
All right, thank you. So at this time, let's open it, let's go to the public and see if anybody wants to speak. Again, they'll have 2 minutes each.
Chairman, could I interject at the moment? We have laid out there that, hey, we think that we're going to go ahead and continue this thing. I'm not in favor necessarily. I think that if we want to hear from the public, let's hear from the public. Certainly that's on the table, but to state we're going to continue this and then open it up for a public hearing seems a bit presumptuous. We haven't voted on it. It's just been a motion. So let's keep the meeting in order and according to that and make sure that people's input would be appropriate as if we were having a hearing because we really should be having a hearing because we haven't continued it at this point.
This was more of a courtesy to the public that have been hanging online, waiting to speak, and giving them the opportunity, should they want to speak tonight, or they can return in September, should it be voted that it gets continued to September. So I'm leaving it up to the public whether or not they choose to speak now, or if it gets continued, they speak in September. If by chance when we get to the vote dies and the continuance doesn't happen, then we'll repeat this whole process. We'll go back to the applicant. The applicant we'll go back to staff. Staff will give their presentation. The applicant will give their presentation. And should any of the public that's still around want to voice their concerns at that time, we'll treat it as the case is there. So at this point, let's just see if anybody from the public chooses to address us at this time. If there's a few of them, we'll let them speak. If there's none, then we'll bring the discussion back up here and discuss if we want to continue this, let the motion die, or go back and do this as a regular hearing as it was originally scheduled for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, this is Adam again. And one thing I just need to understand specifically about the continuance request is I don't know what's expected to change between now and a potential hearing in September. The application is a request for a setback reduction on the PAD, and the substance that remains the same between now, August, or September. Questions, I guess I'm just at a loss. What does the extra 2 months accomplish when the application remains the same?
Mr. Alabrani, or Commissioner Alabrani, I'm going to ask that you kind of address that comment, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Ba, I do respect your opinion on the overwhelming support, but the record that we have may indicate otherwise. Without the variance tonight, the current plan is moot. So it would give the Trilogy Board of Directors an opportunity to ensure that the neighborhood objections to noise and property diminution would be properly addressed or thoroughly addressed, and to remove some of the significant letters in the file here and have them withdraw their dissent. Apparently, it is not as clear-cut as you might indicate, in my opinion, having read the record. Thank you.
They've muted me.
No, we can hear you. Okay, well,
Commissioners, Chairman, this is Nancy Davidson. I just wanted to reiterate, it's not a variance tonight. It's a deviation, which is maybe a technicality, but it is a huge difference. And also, if the motion to continue fails tonight, or if commissioners decide to vote that motion down, commissioners are free to make a different motion after considering the motion to continue.
okay, thank you, Nancy. So I'm going to look to Ava. If there's anybody, any of the residents that wish to speak today, let's open it to them.
Chairman, I have an Ernie Nervegna who had wished to speak. I will unmute him and he can address or continue his comments until the next meeting. Mr. Nervegna, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. I was requested to be handy if you had any questions for me. I have no comments at this time, though.
Okay. This is really meant for the residents to voice their concerns on the case. So if you don't have any, we'll move along to the next speaker.
The next request I had was a Gary Shaughnessy. I don't see Mr. Shaughnessy on the line. And a Daniel Morrissey. Mr. Morrissey, did you wish to address the commission? Okay, not hearing From the three people I had listed, I'll now select everybody that is on the line. I will unmute you momentarily and ask somebody to state your name if you wish to speak. I will be unmuting now. Does anybody wish to speak?
I'm not hearing any other than just a lot of feedback.
I will try one more time. Does anybody wish to speak?
I will say no. Okay. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. Let's just bring the discussion back up the dais. I think Commissioner Alibrandi has kind of voiced his thoughts on this. Is there any other discussion as to whether we vote on a continuance or do we hear the case tonight?
I can say something. So,
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
yeah, what I've heard so far is, I don't see a reason to delay it. To me, it sounds like it's a minor deviation to allow for these courts. I think we still have a full DR review, if I'm hearing right. So I'm not sure I understand the impact, and I haven't heard anything yet, obviously. I hope nobody hung up because they thought it was going to be delayed when I don't know. I don't see the value. And to Mr. Baugh's point, what is going to change between now and then? It's just a deviation to a setback. It isn't anything to do with any use permits or anything like that, or any specific physical features that we are aware of. So I don't know. I mean, we did review it during study session, as I recall, and it was a very thorough discussion, and I don't recall any issues that hadn't been addressed, including sound walls and lighting shields and other things. So I haven't read the report that you talk about, Commissioner Alibrandi, so perhaps I'm missing something, but I don't hear anything that would justify deferring the case.
So what is the residents' concern right now? Is it more zoning related, that they're concerned about the deviation with the setback, or are they mainly concerned with what's being designed here?
Chairman, if I may ask Ashley McDonald, the project planner, to speak?
Yes.
And Chairman, this is Nancy. I would recommend, since there are questions from the commissioners and we haven't voted on the motion to continue yet, I'd recommend just continuing the typical public hearing process, and then considering the motion after it, since there are questions, and so that would be my recommendation.
I think I agree with you on that. Because I think even up on the dais, I think there's kind of a lot of mixed thoughts, and I think there's more that we probably need to hear to see if this is a case that needs to be continued, or as what Commissioner Cavanaugh had pointed out earlier, what's being heard tonight is strictly a deviation for a setback. And if the residents are concerned about items that are being designed on their site, that there's a DR case that's going to come back before us, and that's probably a more appropriate time to address those concerns. So there was a motion out there. We didn't vote on it. Nancy, what do we do? Do we let it die, or do we vote on that motion and go from there?
I don't believe technically there was a second, so it's not.
Well, no, we just were informing the public that the thoughts that the commission was doing was going to be to continue. So we didn't follow through with a second or the vote in general.
Okay.
Nancy, are you still on the line?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, this is Nancy. Yes, so if there's no motion on the table right now, then I would open the public hearing, follow the typical public hearing process, close the public hearing, then put a motion forward.
If I may, Chairman?
Yes.
I would, recommend, let's deliberate it. Let's hear the applicant respond to the concerns. Let's hear the concerns as you know them, because again, I don't know what the concerns have arisen are. But let's let the applicant respond to those and decide then. I think that's my recommendation.
Okay, I think I agree with that. Let's hear the case, let's discuss it, and if we feel that it still needs to be continued, we can continue with the motion that's on the table right now, or we revote it, or can do another motion. Is everybody okay with this?
Can I, yeah, just really quickly, I just want to make sure that we clarify, maybe go to Ashley on this, but make sure that we understand exactly what it is we're looking at. Because my understanding is that it is just the variance that we're looking at this evening and not necessarily the site plan. So I just want to make sure we're all clear what it is we're looking at.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the hearing. Ashley's going to do a presentation, and we'll have a discussion with her, and then we'll go back to the applicant that, from what I understand, they have a presentation that they would like to do. They'll present their presentation, and then we'll just continue the process as we normally do. So Ashley, if you're there and ready for your presentation, if you can please start when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Hopefully you can see my PowerPoint up on your screen. So I'll go through this pretty quickly, but feel free to slow me down if you have any questions or you want me to spend a little bit more time on anything. So as you mentioned, this is just the zoning case at Z2003 for Trilogy at Power Ranch. It is, sorry, my computer is not advancing. So it's located on just a portion of the Trilogy at Power Ranch site. Trilogy is a very large project, or Power Ranch is a very large project. It was about 1,300 acres when approved, and then there is a adult active community that comprises about 672 acres, which is where this facility is located. You can see on this vicinity map, it's south of Queen Creek Road, directly off of Ranch House Parkway. Looking a little bit closer at the aerial of the site, this is where the courts exist today. This is the current configuration. There are 2 courts on either side of that main driveway into the clubhouse. The 2 easternmost courts were originally designed as tennis courts, but as you can see on this, it's a little bit difficult on the court on the left, but the court on the right you can see has been striped to be used for pickleball. So pickleball occurs on 8 courts on the east side of the project, and then on the west side are 2 dedicated tennis courts. So the applicant has submitted a PAD amendment request that is on a total of 5.74 acres of the Power Ranch PAD. It's zoned public facilities and institutional with a PAD overlay. And the applicant is looking to just make an amendment on that 5.74 acre portion of it in order to reduce the front and west side setbacks to 10 feet. We are currently, as has been discussed, we're currently reviewing a design review for the reconfiguration of those courts, the addition of a restroom building and some shade structures. We do anticipate that will come back to the Planning Commission once Town Council has taken action on the rezoning request. So there will absolutely be another public hearing and opportunity to look at a lot of the things that have been talked about, and you've read through those public comments. The zoning exhibit just shows the 2 parcels that are impacted by this PAD amendment request. And then, as I stated previously, they are looking to reduce the front and west side setbacks to 10 feet. Current building setbacks are 25 feet on both of those, and then landscape setbacks are 20 feet on the front and 15 feet on the side. So that would also reduce down to 10 feet. The applicant has provided this development plan that shows the proposed reconfiguration of those courts. So you can see on the east side of the main entry drive, there will be, let me see if I can turn on my laser. There would be a tennis court here, and then pickleball courts on this court, and then tennis courts on this side. As part of the design review, we know that there are a total of 3 pickleball courts proposed here and 3 pickleball courts proposed here. So there would be 10 courts total. And again, that more specific detail is included with the design review application. The applicant also provided this setback exhibit that shows current currently what the setback requirement is with this red dashed line, and then the approximate areas of encroachment of those courts and fences in the tan color. And then the much discussed sound wall is located here on the eastern boundary of the site. So there has been a number of public meetings. Two that I have attended have been on May 29th of 2019, and then again this year in February. You heard from Adam that there was another one just recently. And in the meetings, there has been discussion about the phasing. Just some curiosity about how the improvements would be phased in. It will be one phase. There's been a lot of discussion on the noise, the impacts of the pickleball, as that the ball hits the pickleball racket specifically, the noise study, and whether or not the sound wall will provide the relief that those residents seek. And then there were some questions on the setback changes and what the impacts of that would be. In your staff report, staff did include 10 comments. 5 additional comments were sent to you in your Dropbox that came out after the PC report. So hopefully you had an opportunity to look at those. And those residents who provided those comments are listed there, so you can take a look at those. We have also been in receipt of a number of comment cards for this hearing. There are a total of 24 people submitted comments against the application, 77 in support of that application. There was one person provided written comment that I'll just read to you on those comment cards. It was from a Patrick Carmody who was against the proposal and stated that we never voted for this increased amount and are against it. Thank you for your consideration. All the others just indicated that they were either for or against the item. Staff does recommend approval of the request. We believe that it will serve the community to be able to add these additional courts. It meets the required findings. And so if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer those. And then I think that Adam probably still wants to give his presentation as well.
Yes, so we're going to keep with you, Ashley, and see if anybody has any questions for you, and then we'll give Adam his 10 minutes. So right now, I'm going to look, does anybody have any questions for Ashley at this time?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Mackin.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a question. Do you know if any of those comments or any of the feedback was from residents that are immediately east to those pickleball courts, or whereabouts they might be located in the vicinity of the project?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Commissioner Mackin. There are a number of those comment letters are in proximity to it. I didn't have an opportunity to go through, and addresses weren't provided for all of those that submitted the comment cards. But we have heard concerns specifically from these residents here immediately to the east because of their proximity. Through the neighborhood meetings, they have expressed concern.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ashley?
I have one question, Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Ashley, related to this application, are there, most of the comments seem to be on, we didn't approve this plan in essence. And what I want to understand is, what we're talking about right now has nothing to do with the plan, the number of courts or anything. Is it truly simply we're saying we're going to allow a setback? And then if, let's just say that it's true that they never voted on this, there clearly would be a time when this board would vote to approve that plan. Is that a correct understanding of where we're at here?
Commissioner Munt, I'm gonna try to answer that the best I can. And Nancy, feel free to jump in if you think I'm misrepresenting anything. But the request, they're kind of tied together in that if the applicant wasn't proposing this configuration in these courts, then is the setback requirement or the setback reduction really required? And I think a lot of the concern and question from the public in the community that are concerned about the board process was that uh, one, that vote happened in 2014, and two, the configuration has changed slightly. But I guess I can't really answer the question of whether or not that was done appropriately,
Yeah,
and
and
whether or not that vote
Ashley,
still stands.
yeah, and Ashley, this is Nancy. Also, although we can definitely, part of the process is considering neighbor concerns, the role of a commissioner tonight for approval of this item, whether the HOA acted within the scope of its authority or not is not a factor or a reason for denial or approval.
Right.
And they're just two separate items. So, but of course, the citizen concerns and feedback, that's a critical part of approval or denial, but we can't base a decision. And also, just as a side note, there's no indication that we've seen, although we don't look at that, but it doesn't appear there was any type of improper action that we are aware of. So that's just
Okay, no, thank you. And then as a follow-up, what I understand is they're saying that the scope of this project was expanded and hence they're asking for these variances. So the next question would be that if they get this variance, but then as a board, they meet and the citizens say, no, we don't want these extra courts. There's nothing that having these variances would tie them to having to build that. They could simply just do the old design. Is that correct?
Commissioner Munt, that's correct. I mean, one of the things to consider is that as you're approving a PAD, part of that is a development plan. So as staff looks at it, we would make sure that it's substantially in conformance with the development plan that you see on the screen now. And so that would be something that staff would have to evaluate.
Okay, very good. I just want to get some clarity on that. Thank you all.
Yes, and Commissioner, I just want to also specify that although it sounds like a minor technical thing, it's not a variance that they're applying for tonight. It's a deviation, which is something that can be done with an overlay. And the reason why it's important to say a deviation is because a variance is a much harder standard to reach legally. But here, this is not one of these. It's not one of these that they have to prove that they qualify for a variance.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Chairman?
Everything. Commissioner Alibrandi.
Ashley, a question for you. On the east property, as they rotate those two courts from a north-south orientation to east-west, there was a buffer there, and I couldn't tell from the map what the buffer was and obviously what it is now. It's going to be right up against that sound wall and the properties around the other side. Do you have an approximate idea how big that buffer is today on the courts that are there?
Oh, that is a good question. And I don't know the answer to that. But as this moves forward through the design review, I would certainly include that information. They're in a very similar location, but you are correct. The orientation has shifted.
So that goes to actually Commissioner Cavaney's concern about what's going to be changing. This is one of the issues that changed. The plan that was shown in the pictures of 2014 in the record showed vertical orientation. When they spin them, they actually bring them very close to those properties to the east. So that was one of the concerns. Mr. Chairman, I will indicate that given there is another chance to review the design review, that I do understand that this is a deviation just for the setback, but if there is another opportunity for the people to come in and sort this thing out with their own board and also to bring the plan to us, I'm willing to withdraw my intent to request a motion to continue. We can go forward with this, but the design review will probably be the point where it may be more appropriate to discuss this, neighborhood concerns, noise, and property diminution. So I'm willing to step back from that.
Okay, thank you for doing that. That's very appreciative. And just to remind everybody, this zoning case, we're only providing a recommendation to council, so there's going to be 2 layers of oversight on this. Whatever happens, whatever the motion is or gets approved tonight will go on to city town council, and they'll have the final vote. And then, as you pointed out, there's going to be a DR case that will come before us with another layer to look at this.
Thank you for your patience.
So Ashley, I do have a question for you regarding this setback deviation. What is it, what's the deviation going from and to, and why is it being requested? Is it due to these pickleball courts to get them everything to fit on the site, or can you help me understand a little bit more? Okay, so you're going from 25 to 10, 20 to 10, 15 to 10. So how does that relate to the site plan? Why are they requesting these deviations?
Sure. So, and keep in mind, this is only the front setback and then the west side. So they're not looking for a deviation on the east side where the pickleball courts are. And I apologize, I didn't indicate west side on this slide here, but it is in the staff report and in the condition that it only applies to the west side over here. And you'll notice, I'll go back to the aerial image, but you'll notice that there's currently only the 2 courts. As they shift, in order to accommodate that third court, to add a restroom building and the shade structures, it's just more building on the site. And so shifting the courts to the north and a little bit to the west helps accommodate some of those amenities for the court users.
So it's really just to get the courts into outside of the setback. We're not building,
Correct.
we're not going vertical.
The fence will be within the setback. The chain link sports fence will be within the setback,
Okay.
but there won't be, like, the restroom building won't be within that setback, or the shade structures.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. Is there anybody other questions for Ashley at this time, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chairman. Ashley, is in speaking with, speaking with the attorney on this case before this meeting and earlier this week, he indicated that at some point they had a design revision that would not require this 10-foot deviation to be on the west side, that it was only along Ranch House Parkway, I believe. Are you aware of that, or did I mistake that?
No, Vice Chair, thank you for pointing that out. And I know that Adam will likely talk about this a little bit as part of his presentation as well. But the most recent submittal of the design review does include those courts shifting further to the south. It hasn't gone through the full review process, so we don't have review comments back from all of our reviewers. And so we need to be able to take a look and make sure that there isn't anything in that design or comments we have that will shift them back to their currently proposed location, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So we have seen and a plan has been submitted that shows that shift. But in order to we thought that it best not to make changes to the PAD, considering we haven't actually reviewed that and made sure from a code perspective that this new plan still works.
That sounds like a very safe way to look at it. So thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question for you, and then we'll go over to Adam for his presentation. Could you remind me on the comment cards you got, what were the numbers again in favor and against?
There was 24 against and 77 in favor.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll move over to the applicant. Adam, if you're still on, I believe you stated that you wanted to make a presentation, so you have our attention.
Great. Now, I'm going to share a presentation that I have here. All right, members of the committee, thank you for your time. When you are an active adult community, it's important to stay competitive, vibrant, and up to date with current trends and technologies, particularly with the newest active adult communities that have come in close proximity at Eastmark. A community like this, 20 years old, if you don't stay current, you quickly become outdated. And the current trend is to add pickleball. Pickleball has 3.3 million players across the country. And specifically, 64% of those core players are 55 years or older. Trilogy, in the short time it's had a club, has 200 plus club members, and it's one of the fastest growing clubs within Trilogy. There is a need to have both tennis and pickleball courts. And I've been involved in this case since about December or so, and it is kind of makes me chuckle a little bit that there's a sort of a revolt between the tennis players and the pickleball players. But I think walking through this presentation, you'll see exactly why this makes good sense. This is a PAD. PADs are specifically designed and intended to have deviations. That's exactly what their purpose is. It was originally zoned PAD in 97. There's been amendments for PADs in 1999, again in 1999, in 2000, in 2003. In almost every circumstance, they've modified development standards. And so what we're asking to come before you today is, again, modify the development standards for effectively a 10-foot setback along Village Parkway, which, by the way, is a street, but is actually not a public street, but a private tract. And by doing this deviation, you can actually get better utilization of the open space recreational area and provide the things that are needed after 20 years of operating here, which include better restrooms or new restrooms, new gathering spaces, refreshment areas, and additional sport courts. There was some doubt, I think, alleged that this had not been voted on. Here is the formal vote. And as you can see,
Are they seeing your screen?
oh, are you not seeing the screen? Are you guys seeing this?
We see a screen that says it's two people playing pickleball, and it says pickleball, a critical amenity for active adult communities.
Mr. Chairman, will you give me the luxury of trying to solve this real quick? My screen shows, let me exit out of here real fast.
We will put Mr. Baugh's time on pause until he figures out his technical difficulty.
How about this? Does this work?
No, so that's what.
No.
No? Okay, so what are we
Go
doing
back to
there?
share screen.
Shared screen.
Maybe you need a
What?
higher broadband.
Do you have to give you control of that?
Or exit out of this. I don't
Exit
know if
out of
that's-
this. Okay, share right here.
Yeah.
It's
Or you
not
can
says
say
stop sharing.
Say stop sharing now and then. Here.
Let's try it again. Share content. PowerPoint. What do you see now?
Approval additional sport courts in 2016.
Okay, I'm gonna. Well, here's what we'll do. Give me a second. I'll go to. I'll tell you what. We'll go right here. This was what was approved in 2016. This was a vote by the membership. 67% approved the request to spend additional monies to repurpose the courts and add 2 courts. So this has been approved time and time again. In 2016, the residents voted on it. In 2017-18, an advisory design committee was formed. Criteria was established for what this future development would look like. Plans were started. A DR submittal was submitted a year ago, and then staff came back and commented, said, you know what? You need to actually adjust the PAD setbacks to accommodate this. So in September last year, we got that notice. In February, we submitted the PAD. And as recently as just last Friday, we had a chance to yet again review another proposal from another member of the community. In order to give that proposal fair consideration, the board held a special meeting to evaluate that alternative plan and voted 6-1 to deny it and move forward with the current plan that you have before you today. This proposal includes 3 dedicated tennis courts, 2 pickleball area courts, and those 2 pickleball area courts will have a total of 6 courts, and 1 multi-use court that will be used between tennis and pickleball as schedules necessitate. But what's important is that this proposal include the required surface areas, the lighting, the netting, and the specific dimensions, not just for the court, but for the overrun areas. So when you run out of the boundaries of the court and you hit a ball, you're not running into a wall or a person next to you. Go on to the next slide. Here is the area in question. And I want to point out here, there today are 2 courts right there that have 8 pickleball playing fields currently today. What we are proposing is to replace the 8 pickleball courts today with 6 pickleball courts. What you'll see here is we're adding 2 new courts in the very center near the drive aisle, but we're not changing or removing the pickleball that's already been played on the east side, and it's been played there since the very beginning in 2014. That's the only area where pickleball has been played, And that will be the only area where pickleball will continue to be played between there and the extra multi-use court. And I think that's a really important consideration because we're not bringing an impact here that hasn't existed for the last 6 years since it was started. Here's an exhibit that shows last month, your June Planning Commission, the setback deviations that we were requesting. The areas in yellow show the deviations. The area in blue is a sound wall that was being added. I'll get to that one a little bit later. Since June, we've modified our proposal. We've pulled our courts down a little bit. In particular, now what we used to have a reduction of 15 feet on the west side here, now it's literally down to like 14 or 15 inches. So we've completely pulled that court off that west side and pulled it down, which brings the lighting back off of there. But I want to highlight something, and this really speaks directly to what Commissioner Alan Brandy said. The courts on our east side are no closer after proposal than they are presently located today. And the pickleball that's currently playing on those courts today will be located and playing there on those courts after this approval. This setback deviation on the north side doesn't change that pattern or proximity at all on the east side. So have there been some questions about noise? Absolutely. And that's expected as part of this process. But pickleball has always been played on the east sides, and the western courts have always had tennis play. But there's a lot of other things that are occurring that you can't see in this map. It's right next to a golf course. There's a tee box there. There's a driving range right next to it. There's the putting green right next to it. There's tennis playing. There's automobiles. There's airplanes. So there's a lot of ambient noises. It's not. It's important that you consider all those things that are occurring. Now, we did have a noise study come and look at this. And that noise study was shared with the community. And then they came back out and did additional measuring again since the Planning Commission last June. And what they did is they looked at what's the purpose. The town has a noise code standard. So this can't be an arbitrary decision. It has to look at, are we exceeding what the town's noise standard is? Then they took at the method and they measured 5 different locations across the courts, all next to existing residences. And then what they found is those results show that it does not exceed the town code requirement of 55 dBA. But as a mitigating measure, that noise study recommended that they build an 8-foot tall sound wall along the east side. And that was largely in response to the concern that was raised by the homeowner to the east. While it doesn't require this at all, effectively, this is a mitigating effort to be responsive to that concern rather than ignore that concern. I think there was a question about lighting, but just so you know, all lighting on the courts will have shields away from the adjacent properties. And most important, the photometric study shows that lighting doesn't exceed what's allowed at 0.3-foot candles at the property line. And because the court on the east side is no closer afterwards than it is today, and the court on the west side will effectively be observing the setback short of the extra, 12 or 14 inches, the status quo remains basically the same. I think what's important here is this proposal does not reduce the parking that exists on this property. And that matters because this development has an administrative use permit that was approved for a parking reduction, largely because they were able to offset it with 42 golf cart spaces. So we found a way to not only add the courts that the voters voted on, but to do it in a way that doesn't bring it below the 75% landscape requirement, and that does in a way that doesn't reduce required parking. And when I looked at the alternative plan that was provided by the opposition fairly recently, it not only reduced the landscaping beyond that threshold, but also reduced significant parking. This is the right solution. We even have shade canopies that will be installed that match the existing shade canopies that are currently on the bocce ball courts right now today, which are right next to the tennis courts. And so here was the alternative plan that was shown. I'll click through this real quick and you can kind of get an idea. And it was sold to the community that this alternative plan was going to observe all the setbacks required by code, that was going to create a tremendous cost savings, and that was going to be extremely efficient as far as time goes. Well, once that plan was brought before the board for consideration, there was a lot of issues with it. First of all, the pickleball courts shown on the alternative plan were too small, and they weren't the preferred court size. And when you have smaller courts, that means you have too many people compact in one area, which can lead to safety and spacing issues, and probably even, if an injury occurs, potential litigation issues. But most importantly, there was poor court access. To get to one court, you had to walk through a second one, and also some ADA access limitations around some of the buildings that they had shown. But the sunshades were oriented wrong, given the afternoon shade in the evening, they weren't optimal. But I think the most fatal flaw of that alternative plan that was sort of late in the day brought to us was that the setbacks weren't even measured correctly. They measured them from the back of the curb, but not the property line. And as you know, you measure setbacks from property line. So when you have to shift it 7 feet further, effectively move all those courts into what is currently a drive aisle and parking field, which would completely obliterate the whole purpose of the plan, which was to be cost saving, efficient, and time efficient. I think some other things worth considering is their plan effectively tries to flip the pickleball from the east side and move it to the west side, but it doesn't change the nature of pickleball. And all it does is affect the historical play that's always occurred on the east side. That alternative plan would restart that process, but it would actually require 4 new things. It would require variance to the landscape requirement below 75%. It would require a variance to the landscape requirement on the west side. It would require a variance from the north setback, and it would require a new administrative use permit to reduce the parking even further below than what they barely got last time. So the reason why I say all this is because there has been significant participation and involvement with this community since 2014 and 2016 and 17 and 18. And I want to go back to this slide right here that shows all these meetings which have occurred. And look here at the bottom. These are all the community presentation dates moving forward with this proposal. These things have been shared and presented, particularly also through electronic communication as well. When I come back and consider all the reasons why this makes sense, the voters voted because they needed new courts. They voted for new courts because the demand for pickleball was skyrocketing. This is a fulfillment of that request. The only way to make that work without reducing parking and reducing the landscaping below that requirement is to adjust the deviation a little bit. We've come significant ways by reducing the setback deviation from the west side and by adding a sound wall on the east side. But I want to make it clear that we are not moving our courts any closer to the east side than they presently exist today. And whereas there's 8 pickleball courts playing right now on the east side, our new proposal will show only 6 courts on the east side. So let me end with this last exhibit here. That's a very handsome man, I got to point out, just for the record. This is necessary to stay competitive with other communities. It's a resident amenity because there's strong user demand. It's been voted on by the community. It's been voted on by the board. And in fact, the board has funds both in a capital expense, by a capital acquisition, and then as well as R&R funds. And so those funds have been approved and allocated. It has tremendous support. You can see by the number of cards that were submitted. And the alternative plan was denied by the board last week. It has staff support. And I want to say lastly that the 1997 Valley View High School varsity tennis captain, yours truly, approves of this request. So even I, as a tennis player, can see the value of a pickleball court in an active adult community. So I appreciate the time and consideration you've given this. But at the end of the day, all we're asking for is a deviation of our setback effectively along the street. And that doesn't change the substance or layout. And you will have a future opportunity at a DR hearing to evaluate the actual layout and the substance of the application, and particular questions regarding lighting, parking, or noise.
All right.
And
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, I think I've probably taken up my 10 minutes, but I would, because there has been some type of comment that perhaps the board hasn't followed a procedure, and that it's almost offensive to the board here that are looking at me as they sit in the room. If that doubt remains by the members of this committee, I would love the opportunity to turn some time over to the president, who can, former president, who can outline that process. But I'm only going to do that if that's requested by you. He is available if needed.
At this time, I don't think it's necessary. If it becomes later on during this hearing, he will have his opportunity to describe that process, but I don't think it's required at this time.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your presentation. And I'm guessing since you're an attorney now, your tennis game wasn't good enough to get you into the pros. So hang in there, maybe someday.
Someday. I'm embarrassed to say that I probably haven't picked up a tennis racket since 1997.
Okay. At this time, does anybody on the commission have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Alibrandi.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. Mr. Baugh, I heard what you were saying, but yet you said that there was going to be no change to the eastern boundary. Actually, Mr. Chair, this is going to slip into design review for 1 second. Mr. Baugh said that there was going to be no change to the eastern boundary, yet from the aerial, it clearly appears that the buffer zone that exists today is going to be changed when those 2 courts are reoriented and moved to the far east wall, and then the sound wall will be created. Am I missing something on the aerial view, Mr. Baugh? That desert strip that we see to the right of the yellow circle is disappearing.
You can see the sidewalk along the edge of the aerial today. and you can see the court at the corner of that sidewalk. That sidewalk remains afterwards, and the sound wall still is in that same location on the west side of that sidewalk.
So I will stand down until
Yeah,
the
there's no
design
sign,
review.
and there's yeah. So if there is a change, we're literally talking about inches.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Mackin.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mackin.
Mr. Ball, could you speak a little bit to, we received in the package correspondence from a law firm representing some of the discontented homeowners. And in that, there was a response from the association law firm refusing, it appears to be, from my interpretation, refusing a second or an alternative acoustic analysis. I think especially during a point of a pickleball tournament occurring at the development. Could you speak to that and what is the association's representation or side in regards to that?
Absolutely. I believe the attorney was hired by Mr. Bob Hartley to the east. I'm not sure he represents other folks in the community. I could be wrong, but yes, they did attempt to submit a noise study from another party, but that other party did not even come out and take actual measurements at the property, just wrote an opinion. Whereas our noise consultant actually took measurements to 2 different locations, and then from those measurements was able to model it. And so you have a complete 2 different types of studies, one that's accurate based on on-site measurements and one that's an opinion.
Mr. Baugh, the attachment said that the association explicitly refused them to conduct the analysis and that they sent them a cease and desist. So can you explain that if they didn't come out, well, they were refused, it appears to be. So can you speak to that point?
Yeah, I will. In fact, I'm going to have Wayne Norley, the former vice president, speak to that point because he was part of that process before my involvement and can actually speak effectively to that. Wayne, just for the record, it's important you give your name and address.
Oh, okay. My name is Wayne Norley. My address is 4695 East Narrowleaf Drive here in Gilbert. There was a request for their sound person to come out. They wanted to come out on a day when we were having a pickleball tournament to raise funds for the fire department, specifically a couple of different fire departments, and they wanted to come out and be on the courts at the time that we were doing that fundraiser for the fire department. It was a fundraiser. We ended up getting $4,000 that we raised for the first responders, specifically Gilbert and Queen Creek fire departments. And we did say no to that, but offered to have them come back at another time. All they had to do was give us a date and we would set it up for them, and that was never done.
Specifically, that your letter to them from your attorney to their attorney says, this association will be happy to arrange a date and time for testing to occur. This is a charity event for local firefighters is simply not the forum.
Is there a reason why the charity event wouldn't be an appropriate time to measure the sound if it maybe is a time when there is a pinnacle of sound from the pickleball occurring? Why wouldn't that be an appropriate time to measure the acoustics?
Well, they only gave us 2 days advance notice that they wanted to do it, and we had already worked out a number of things with the fire department. So it was going to be disruptive to our ability to continue to handle our fundraiser. And that's the reason we said we'd be happy to have them come out any other time. We could even arrange for as many pickleball players as they wanted, but they chose not to. And
could you explain to me how it would be disruptive to your tournament specifically?
The organizers of the tournament felt that it was going to be disruptive because the people might be out on the courts at the time that they were doing their testing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move along and see, is there anybody from the public still on that wishes to address the commission at this time?
I do have a member from the community that's here that wanted to read a comment of the record. I don't know if they were able to do that online, but they are here if you'd entertain from Dan Poole.
Yes, let me just, I'm looking at Ava to see if there's anybody online. Let me start with her first, and then we'll come back to your
Okay,
resident.
I can go back and check the people that I checked before. Ernie Nervigna? Do you wish to speak or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Ernie, you'll have 3 minutes. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Ernie Nervigna, 4518 East Sour Drive, Gilbert, Arizona. The only thing I want to state is that the alternate proposal that was brought forth to the board last week has the pickleball courts closer to the homes than they are presently on the east side. So that group of people that you heard from that said the noise is too severe on the east side, want to move the courts to the west side, but closer to the homes than they are today. So be aware of that as you look at their proposal. So if noise is such an issue, why are they okay moving it to the other side of the complex, closer to the homes in the future than they are today? It's not logical to me. Okay?
Do you have anything else you wish to add, or is that complete your statement?
No, as everything said, is we're just looking at a vote tonight for the setback, nothing else. We'll present the design to you in the future at such time when we have it completed.
Okay, thank you. Eva, is there anyone else on that would like to speak?
Sorry, Chairman. Gary Shaughnessy and Daniel Morrissey are no longer on the line, but I can try again with the select all and unmuted and see if anybody states their name.
Okay, let's do that.
I am unmuting right now. Please state your name if you would like to speak. Does anybody wish to speak?
I'm going to say no. Okay. Mr. Barr, I believe you had a resident that wished to make a statement to the commission. Is that correct?
That is correct. You want to give your name and address for the record?
Okay, and you'll have 3 minutes for your statement.
Yeah, it won't take that long. Thank you. My name is Dan Poole. I live at 4288 East Ficus Way. I've been a Gilbert resident for 10 years, recently moved to Trilogy a little over a year ago. I've played recreational pickleball and competitive pickleball from St. Cloud, Minnesota to Seattle, Washington, down the coast of California, and recently in San Antonio, Texas. I played on many types of courts, from poor to the courts at Indian Wells Tennis Garden, where the National Pickleball Tournament is routinely held. I play daily at either Pecos Park in Ahwatukee or Tempe Park courts, which both are 20 to 30-minute drive. Trilogy's courts are some of the worst I've played on. I'm asking the board to approve this proposal so Trilogy can move forward to improve the safety and quality of their courts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And if there's no one else from the public that wishes to address us, I'll go back to the applicant. If there's any rebuttals, oh, hold on.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thanks for your time. Look, it's been a long hearing, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's important just to understand that this really is a decision made by the board that was voted on by the members of the community. The Sport Advisory Committee, or whoever they're properly named, put forth a recommendation to the board regarding design. That recommendation then got voted on by the board yet again. And eventually the funds have been approved and set aside and will be continued to be approved once construction final dollars what's the word? Identified and calculated. I think to Commissioner Munt's comment here, what this does is it proves an opportunity for the setback reduction. But at the end of the day, courts have to be constructed, a budget has to be signed off, and if that budget's not signed off, then these courts won't go forward. But to be able to have a community with 20-year-old courts and to maintain competitive with the other active adult communities, this is what the community has asked for. Even if there are some folks who are against, clearly by the speaker cards, you can tell that there's more support. I think Ashley's seen that at the meetings that she's attended. And in the last one, I think they asked for a survey and it was like 70 to 30% in support. So thank you for your time. I've kind of rambled on, but this is an important matter for these folks they've been working on for many, many years, and they look forward to the decision.
Okay, thank you for that. So at this time, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, hold on, I'll keep the public hearing. Ava has something she wants to say. Eva.
Thank you, Chairman. We did receive written comments that the commission has not seen yet that were received today that I need to read into the record.
Okay, please do so.
We have from Willis Bulcha. I am Willis Bulcha. My wife Jean and I own a home in Trilogy. About 5 years ago, I served on the Trilogy at Power Ranch Pickleball Club Board of Directors for 2 years, and I served as president of the Pickleball Club for 1 year. Based upon directions from the then Trilogy at Power Ranch Board of Directors and Management, I led an annual fundraising campaign 2 years in a row with the specific purpose of raising money to assist in funding pickleball court amenities, such as restrooms, water fountain, storage area, lights, and shade for social gathering and observing competition. During those 2 years, we raised almost $20,000 for such purposes. These funds are currently being held for such purpose in the TPR Foundation financial accounts. The need for new pickleball courts and tennis courts was evident well over 5 years ago, and the need has only been exacerbated by the deterioration of the court surfaces. Also, the demand for pickleball courts has only increased over the past 5 years, as pickleball has become the fastest growing sport in the nation, specifically for active seniors, and this is true in Trilogy as well. I and my wife Jean definitely support the Trilogy at Power Ranch Board of Directors request to amend Ordinance 1450. The next email is from Frank Rossi. My name is Frank Rossi, and I reside in the Trilogy subdivision. I respectfully object to the zoning variance request, read the proposed tennis pickleball courts in Trilogy at Power Ranch. Alternate plans that meet the town of Gilbert zoning requirements have been considered and rejected by Trilogy's administrator and trustees. I feel this variance imposes a nuisance to surrounding residents and further adds to the limited shared parking problems that our neighbor shares with Trilogy. I have another email. Dear members, we do not support the request of above for several reasons. The entire and expanded sports plan expansion plan was not voted on by all homeowners to fund. The loss of attractive green belts and stone arbors as architectural interest on arrival entry will be more loss of curb appeal. The expansion will include tall, unattractive, and institutional appearing chain link fence along the entry to the clubhouse like a tunnel and may obstruct traffic in the four-way stop at some location. Town of Gilbert pickleball and tennis courts with lights are now available at the new regional park on Higley. The current entry to our community does not need additional one-story storage buildings, restrooms, social buildings, or sun shields over bleachers with more red tin roofs. The request for code and setback variance is not consistent with the original Town of Gilbert plot plan or the master plan community plans. The increased noise and proposed noise abatement walls will also look unattractive on entry. Too much hardscape with no relief of green grass or mounding grass and no amount of trees and bushes will adequately decrease the sound that will carry throughout the neighborhood. Please vote no as you are the elected Town of Gilbert representatives of the homeowners. That is from Greg Walter and Bev Love. And the last email states, as a homeowner in Trilogy at Power Ranch, I'm very concerned that the sport courts under review at this time are not the plan we, the residents, previously voted on several years ago. Much has been added to the original plan voted on. I hope you will not approve this item. And that is from Luvina. Those were the comments received today by email.
Okay, thank you for that. Adam, do you have any need to have a rebuttal to any of those comments that you just heard?
Yes, thank you. I think it's very disingenuous to suggest some of the things that I just heard in there. The residents voted on the funds to add 2 new sport courts. And then a committee or sports court advisory team was formed to lay out what those courts would look like, what would be the criteria, the amenities. That advisory committee team is the one who's tasked with presenting this to the board for the board's approval. The residents, there isn't a mechanism in the board's procedures and policies to present every single subtle change that goes to the community for approval. That's why you have a board. That's why you have an advisory committee. And that's why that committee makes a recommendation to the board, and that's why the board votes on it. The residents have voted to approve the funds for this, and they have voted to allow an advisory committee to design it. And then the board considers that recommendation and rejects it or approves it. And they've approved it. And that's what we've brought before this panel today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So at this time, I will close it to the public, bring the discussion back up to the dais. Does anybody want to say anything? Commissioner Simon?
Yeah, so in my understanding, we're looking at a zoning amendment, and I feel based on that I see no reason why we wouldn't approve a zoning amendment. If the community is taking a vote, the community is approving whatever that design is. I mean, obviously there may be some aspects of it that we need to take into consideration here, but at a later date, I think that we allow them the ability to make that decision and take that to their community for a vote. So I would be in favor of allowing this zoning amendment to move forward, and then we'll see the design review at a later date.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Mackin.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mackin.
Yeah, I think you've done they've done a good job of explaining themselves and explaining their process. I think I don't have an issue with really the variance deviation or the design itself even. But what I would be concerned about and need additional evidence probably presented at a later date is that this will not have a significant material effect on those residents and their property values and the enjoyment of their property to the east. I think that's an important point to really drive home. And I would also urge the association now and in the future to take a much softer hand and approach with those discontented residents. I think it would make your lives a lot easier and not cause such a disturbance in this process and getting something that should benefit the community altogether. And it seems like the support is almost completely unanimous for the improvement of those courts and improvement of those amenities. So it seems to me that there's got to be some compromise in there that would please even more people. So I would highly encourage you to just go back maybe and speak with them and see what else can maybe be, what kind of concessions might be able to be made that would satisfy some of those residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Munt, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or are you good?
No, well, I mean, no, I'm good. I've heard, quite a bit, and I guess I'll echo Commissioner Simon that I'm okay with this. And I think that, I guess the one point I will make is that I think that there's times when there's people that are against a certain measure that we sometimes lose sight of the number of citizens who are in favor of it, and also the corollary to how an HOA is managed and the rights that people within an HOA have based upon when you buy a home, it's like your terms and conditions that you click on your phone, but it says that if changes are made, the board will approve them and there's a process. So by no means are we subverting that process here. And hence, I think, it would be my objective to not get in the way of what appears to be a bunch of the citizens that are very much in favor of this at this time, and kind of get into the meat of all the rest of that discussion at design review. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Vice or Commissioner Cavaney?
Yeah, so I think to Commissioner Mackin's comment, I think it was explained the impact of the new layout relative to the current impact, and that is that there are fewer courts. There's an 8-foot sound wall, and by the way, 8-foot sound walls are used to buffer freeway noise. Just so you know, I mean, this is a heavy-duty wall, I'm sure, it being 8 foot tall, and that is not there today. And it is if it is any closer to the homes to the east, as far as I can tell from the aerial and from the design plan, it is, as was mentioned by Mr. Baugh, inches. It is inches at most. So I really think that the reduction of number of courts, the increase of the sound wall situation, and no real proximity change, I think they're doing their best to mitigate it. I think this is a very thoughtful plan, and it's taken several years, it appears, to get where they're at. I don't see any reason to stand in the way of a variance or a deviation to the setback. I'm in support of it. So.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. In listening to the comments tonight, I lean very favorably toward approving this. Staff has reviewed it. It's been in process for 4 years. It seems to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, at least for the variance case, the deviation case to the PAD. This is not a new process. In the town of Gilbert, it's not a new process to the PAD that was approved originally for the trilogy at Power Ranch. I think we're standing in the way of progress if we don't vote on it and move it forward and allow them to get at least this cog in this big process machine taken care of and dealt with. Let's just move it past one tick more. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think there's any need for me to add anything, so I'll entertain a recommendation for council. Vice Chair.
Chairman, I move to approve zoning case Z20-03 Trilogy at Power Ranch.
Actually, it's a recommendation.
That's true, it is. Yeah, I recommend approval of the zoning case Z20-03 Trilogy at Power Ranch. Recommend approval.
I'll second. Yeah.
Okay, seconds from Commissioner Cavaney. Everyone in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank everyone for your time and your patience on this case. I know it was a long one. And just to remind any of the residents that might still be on, this was a vote for recommendation to council. If you want to be heard, again, you'll have, do we know when that council date is? Is it going to be on the August hearing?
Chairman Anderson, this is Ashley.
Go ahead, Ashley.
It is scheduled for August 25th.
August 25th, okay. So if any of the residents wish to address, state their concerns to council, you'll have another opportunity then. And as pointed out, this will come back before us for design review. Now let's move along to administrative items. Planning Commission minutes. Consider approval of the minutes of the study session and regular meeting of June 3rd, 2020. Vice Chair, can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
Motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Cavaney. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Minutes are approved. Report from chairman and members of the commission on current events. I don't have anything to report, but I have a statement. It's nice to have everybody all together again up on the dais. except for the two stragglers that are on the screen there.
Yeah, except me. Sorry.
Maybe next month we'll see you guys.
Yeah, I hope to.
Okay. That's all I had. Does anybody on the commission have anything they'd like to state?
Stay well and be healthy.
Okay. Good point. Report from Planning Services Manager on current events.
Nothing to report this evening. Just thank you all for your patience with our WebEx remote meetings, and we'll see if we have the next meeting in this same manner. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think everything went swell tonight that we can probably do this again next month. That's just my opinion. So with that, I think we'll adjourn and hopefully see each other again next month. Thank you.